Continuing to think about the essay you're going to write, we're going to look at the techniques that George Orwell uses in Marrakech. Remember, the question was, choose a non-fiction text which provokes a strong reaction in the reader. By referring to appropriate techniques, discuss how the writer creates this reaction. We're going to look together at 6 techniques Orwell uses, and I'm going to do a lesson on each one, but at the moment I'm just going to draw your attention to the different techniques. And the first one, and probably the most important one, is the anecdote. And an anecdote is a story about an incident. So for example, the story of the Arab navvy and the gazelle, that would be an anecdote. The story of the Jews rushing to try and get a cigarette from George Orwell, that would be an anecdote. Statistics. A statistic is a fact with a number on it. He doesn't use very many, but we're going to look at one that he does use and think about why that's effective. The rhetorical question. As you know, there are questions and there are rhetorical questions. A rhetorical question is a question that is designed to persuade. So, do you want to get your National 5? Is a rhetorical question because although it seems to offer a yes-no answer, the only sensible answer is yes. The use of you to engage the reader. Now, I was delighted to see that some people had already picked that up in the assessment that they've done. The matter-of-fact tone. He doesn't use a lot of emotive language. He simply reports something as though it's happening in front of you, and that helps to make sure that it's the reader who reacts and who thinks how outrageous this is. He doesn't need to stir you up with emotive language. It's a really interesting technique. And finally, as I'm sure you would expect, metaphors and similes. There are absolutely loads. Now, you wouldn't have to mention all of those techniques in your essay. I would think you would certainly want to mention anecdotes, though. In fact, in all honesty, you could probably write this whole essay on anecdotes alone, but I'd like you to perhaps try and include some other techniques as well. And finally, I'm just going to remind you about the main themes and ideas in this story. Orwell denounces the evils of colonialism by mercilessly exposing the poverty, misery and degradation of the native people of the colonies. In the course of the essay, he also explores sexism, racism and anti-Semitism. He shows the poverty of the people in 5 ways: the burial ritual of the local people, an Arab navvy begging for food, the living conditions of the Jews, the hard lives of farmers cultivating the dry soil, the old women carrying firewood. Orwell then goes on to describe the African soldiers going off to fight in a European war and uses this to question the relationship between the people of the colonies and their colonial masters.